I'm here to talk about the new wave of preservation. And I want you to know that I'm very impressed with Omaha's diverse mixture. There's a lot of young people here. There's a lot of older people here. There's a great group of people. There's architects and city planners. And that is very impressive because when I think about the next wave of preservation, it's really everybody. But it's really going to be led by a bunch of young kids. I'm really active with a group called BYP, Buffalo's Young Preservationists. And when I describe BYP, I say we're just kids who like to do things. We like to do stuff. I would swear, but I'm in front of too many people. But we like to do a lot of cool things. So we're, let's say 20 to 35, 20 to 40. But the rule with BYP is that if you can drink with us, you can hang out with us. So that means that we have a whole variety of different people that come to our events and that are active with Buffalo's Young Preservationists. We started in 2011. The National Trust came to Buffalo. The big national conference came to Buffalo. And we said, let's do a happy hour. Let's try to engage the young professionals that are in preservation. And we did. And that got that conversation started. Just the conference, just a happy hour. Beer. Got a conversation started about why, I know, right? I heard laughing. Beer, okay, is preservation. No. Beer got at that conversation about what is important to us and how can we, as younger people, make our mark in the preservation world. Because, trust me, all we realize, and this is I don't want anybody to be offended, because age does not matter. In fact, as I get older, I get scared because 4 years into this, I was young then. I'm like getting almost 30. So, but, and not that that's, trust me, that's not, I think anybody's young. So anyway, but the point is, I want you to realize that we always remember that we're standing on the shoulders of amazing preservationists that are all different ages and that struggled when our cities were declining in the 80s and the 90s. Preservation, people could care less about preservation. They wanted to tear buildings down all across our country. And it was the people that were there then that really started an incredible movement. It started the preservation movement. In Buffalo, we had every house on one block, 5 houses would be for sale because people wanted out in the 90s. People had left. All of our buildings had shuttered. All of our steel factories were closing like crazy, and people wanted out. And it was the preservationists that really believed in the city and stayed and bought the houses and did the projects that they did to now what I think is start a new wave of preservation. So, with all that said, thank you to everybody who was around then, because I don't want to offend anybody because that is not the point. So BYP started in 2011. We started with a group of 25 or 40, 50 people, and now our happy hours are hundreds of people. They're all different people, groups, diverse. This is actually a very white photo. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. We are pretty diverse these days, which is really exciting on all different levels, men, women, skin colors, ages, where we really try to be as just cool and diverse as we can. So, BYP is a very loose group of people. We are not a nonprofit. We do not have insurance. We do not have an office. We are completely driven by social media. We are completely driven by whatever preservation initiative there is, and I will talk a lot about them. Old House Journal decided to call us Preservation's New Generation. I thought that was cool. I was like, woohoo! Heart bombs in the Old House Journal a couple years back. Neat. So, how many people have been to Buffalo or Niagara Falls? Raise of hands. Now, I grew up in Niagara Falls, like the falls itself that everybody knows about. I grew up with the noise of the falls rumbling in a historic district. And actually, completely to digress, but the house I grew up in is vacant right now. And so I'm now working to save that. So maybe I'll be up talking about that at some point. So, Buffalo, New York. We were a city of 500, almost 600,000 people in 1950. Right now, we are a city of 250,000 people. We have declined greatly. We have declined by half. We have more infrastructure and more roads than you can ever imagine, and we do not know what to do with them. We have local historic districts. We have national historic districts. We have a zillions, this is obviously an exaggeration, but we have tons and tons of local landmarks and also national landmarks. The Chautauqua Institute, not in Buffalo, but that's a big preservation initiative that the National Trust is heading up. That's in our backyard. We have the Guarantee Building by Louis Sullivan. We have Daniel Burnham's Ellicott Square buildings. We have these beautiful neighborhoods that are filled with architecture and gems. I live in the Fargo Estate neighborhood where Wells Fargo literally lived when he lived in Buffalo. It's a beautiful brick, 1890s slate roof. It cannot be beat. And that's our that's our city. Nothing's, I mean, the newest house in Buffalo, with few exceptions, probably from 1930. Okay? So I wanted to show you, you'll get my message over time. I'm not going to be blunt, although I'm a pretty blunt person, but I wanted to show you what matters to Preservation 2.0. So what I think the next wave is. So we saved the Frank Lloyd Wright Darwin Martin House, $40 million restoration. We saved the Guarantee Building that was up for demolition twice. Our City Hall, which is an Art Deco masterpiece built in 1929, was literally up for demolition at some point in our history. But those buildings are good. Thankfully, for the Historic Tax Credit Program, we have 20% by the state. It's capped at $5 million. We have 20% by the federal. We have all of these beautiful daylight factory buildings, and all of our iconic structures are now being brought back to life. In fact, in Buffalo, we're running out of buildings to restore. It's just mind-blowing to think about that. But what we have lots of are little amazing houses. Now, this isn't that little, but really cool houses that are still in, let's say, they're still at risk. Buffalo, the city of Buffalo owns 20,000 properties. The city owns 20,000 properties, vacant lots, vacant buildings. We've lost half of our population. Houses like this exist in the worst parts of Buffalo and are crumbling. They also exist in the best parts of Buffalo and are fine. So our attention in Buffalo, and our attention, I would say, as the new wave of preservation, is less focused on the bigger buildings, the really grand buildings, but if those came up to be demolished, I'm sure we would all be out there with our pitchforks and torches and social media things and be doing to save those buildings too. But it's all about the neighborhoods now. We're really focused on neighborhoods. And so the one thing to think about with the Millennial Generation as a whole, we grew up in the recession, we went to college, we didn't understand if we were going to get a job. We have all of these, our mindset is totally different. We don't want cars. Maybe in the Midwest you want maybe a car, but I lived in Buffalo for 4 years without a car. I rode around on a bike or a moped. That was it. And all my friends were like that. And all the people I talk to that are in high school don't want cars. So, but what they do want is they want neighborhoods. They want walkable, dense communities that matter, ones with character. We're the defiant generation. We're anti-suburbs. We're anti-40 years working at a job. We just are, although I'm very dedicated for some reason, but most of my friends don't keep jobs for 2 years, So, and that's really important when thinking about preservation. And it's really important when thinking about the next wave of preservation and how that affects our world as preservationists. So we're all focused on the neighborhoods. So now if you guys have seen my TED Talk, I did do a TED Talk. These slides are from the TED Talk. It's obviously different. I had to be under 12 minutes, so you're not getting the full story in that TED Talk, but this is sort of the more fuller version. This building, this little house, is located on the east side of Buffalo. Buffalo's biggest, let's say Buffalo's Detroit part, everybody thinks of Detroit, they think of Vacancy. Well, Buffalo's Detroit is the east side of Buffalo. 20 years ago, the community decided, now this is the really staunch preservationists that were crazy awesome and leading the paths, or charging through the storms. They decided to do a local landmark district on the east side, which is by far the roughest part of Buffalo. We have lots of historic districts. They're all beautiful and charming and exciting, and they have walkable communities and bars and things. But this district, I'm going to talk a lot about, they took the plunge, and they're in a predominantly African-American district. Their whole community was divided by a highway that literally tore through their community in the 60s. And the people in this community they decided that they were going to do a local historic district called the Hamlin Park Historic District. And so I will show a lot of photos about this, but I will say this. They were so progressive at their time that the highway that divides that part of the east side of Buffalo, that highway to the right, or to the, let's say, to the east, has fallen apart. It's completely deteriorated. The buildings are not there. There's literally the urban prairie photos that you may have seen online of just grass and vacantness. That's the east of that highway. But the west side of the highway, still on the east side, of course, is where the Hamlin Park Historic District started. And they said, we're going to do a local district. And they did. And oh my goodness, it rules. It's the only stable community on the east side of Buffalo, with a few other exceptions. But it really is the strong, like the heart, because they were progressive in the 90s and did a historic local district. So you get a lot of houses like this that are fabulous and simple, and they're worth maybe $80,000, $100,000 for a beautiful, charming house like this. Yes, please. There are also houses in this district that look like this. This is a beautiful double, just kind of standard traditional. This is a traditional Buffalo double. In our world, we have flats. So you have the first floor is a flat, second floor is a flat. Some people do the townhouses divided 2 stories. Ours are flats. This is a Buffalo double. This house is in the Hamlin Park Historic District. This house is available. Well, it wasn't really on any list. The city of Buffalo owned it. But you would never know it's vacant because the community is so strong because that local district helped to solidify the community that they mow the lawn. It's boarded, but they mow the lawn because they don't want people to think that their neighborhood is declining. And it's not. I will say that. It is not. So the city of Buffalo owned this property. If I remember correctly, they sold it to a buddy of mine named Mike Puma, and he bought this house for $1. So $1, 2 units, invest what, $80,000, and now you've got a $700 rental and you're living for free. That's Buffalo. And that, furthermore, that's the preservation, that's the wave of the millennial generation. So we don't want to own cars, maybe we want to own houses, but at the end of the day, what we want is access, and we want something that's practical. And cities like Omaha, cities like Detroit, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Columbus, those are practical cities to me. Those are the cities where you can still buy a house that matters, that's cheap, where you can make your living, you can do what you want. You don't have to work 40 hours a week. You can take more vacation. That's the wave of the millennial generation, the wave of our future, and it's also the wave of preservation. So, Mike Puma bought that, being restored. Woohoo! Hamlin Park also has this beautiful building, of which we did a big board and seal and painted it and cleaned it all up. But look at this. This could be the next coffee shop. By the way, Hamlin Park, and I didn't say this, but the district started because the college that's in the district wanted to expand and knock down their buildings. So this, and they didn't, of course. So this building is surrounded by college kids. College kids love coffee shops. They love bookstores. They love all this stuff, right? So why is it vacant? Well, Hamlin Park decided 2 years ago to do a national register. And the National Register now allows people to get paid to do their renovations in Buffalo, which is amazing. So now this building is in the process of being renovated. Cool. But I wanted to show you kind of what we deal with in Buffalo, because people, no offense, I didn't see much vacancy when I was here. And vacancy is a big issue in our Rust Belt cities, and really it's a big issue in cities that we don't even think about. Las Vegas, big vacancy issues. Phoenix, what are they going to do without water and then with their abandoned buildings? It's just going to crumble, right? So these are issues, but you know what? 20 years from now, when they're all vacant and we all restored all our houses over here up in the Midwest, they're going to be like, how do you do it? And we're going to look like the gods. So this is another house, so I wanted to point this out. This is a gem. This is the Lythe Cottage. The city of Buffalo, and no offense to the city, but they didn't even know that they own this building. Just saying. We get this problem. I talk about the vacancy vortex a lot. It's like a building is sitting there standing, and it's boarded, and it's stuck. in a vortex. It's the spinning ball of death, you know, the thing you see on your Apple computers. You know, it sticks there. And you know what it is? The house is vacant. It's wanted, hands down. 85% of the time, the house is wanted. But the people don't know how to get to the house. They don't know how to get to the owner. They don't know how to get to the housing court judge. They don't even know how to look up the building. They don't even know how to find it. I mean, imagine if we have a growing immigrant population in Buffalo, and a lot of cities do. Well, if you can't speak English, do you think you can look up who owns that building and you want to buy it? Absolutely not. It's hard for me as the preservation advocate and who knows the pathways to find out who owns buildings. Because Buffalo is we have so much vacancy, and 20,000 lots and buildings is a lot. So this is a really great example of what the new wave of preservation is. So this little Lithe cottage, gorgeous, simple, in the Hamlin Park Historic District. Not under, the city didn't know they owned it, but when they found out that they owned it, because we told them that they owned it, they sold it for $1 to my buddy Matt Newton, and Matt did this. Woo! Yeah, it's awesome. And you know, what's funny about Matt and people like Matt, they don't call themselves preservationists. They just call themselves people who like buildings. And I say that because I think that that is the next wave of preservation. You know, that really is, it's how to engage the people that want to buy the single-family house, that want to put, you know, money into a place and make it their own. And I think that the next wave of preservation, the young kids, you know, they maybe won't call themselves preservationists. They call themselves urban building city lovers. You know, I call myself a building hugger. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I hug buildings all the time. So Matt, 28-year-old guy from East Aurora. Somebody here was just talking to me about East Aurora earlier. So yeah, 28-year-old kid from East Aurora, bought it for $1, now lives in it. It's a great little cottage. I also wanted to share my story with you. So I do development. And I say development, I really mean on a very micro scale. We were in the New York Times for being micro developers, because that's really what I am. I'm just one person with a couple of people, and we do cool, fun projects. But we buy buildings that are ready for demolition. We buy buildings that have been neglected for 20 years, 15 years. They've been falling apart. And this one is sort of my story. And I have lots of these stories, but I will say this one because it was the one that hurt me the most. So you can probably tell I'm really enthusiastic and happy all the time. But this man, this property brought me down to my knees, made me cry all the time because I couldn't believe somebody would do something that neglected buildings so much. And I didn't know what to do with it. So bought it at the city auction, $28,000. The building on the left is the gray house that I got for $22,000. Building on the right I got at the city auction for $28,000. By the way, that's a really good price. So if you want to come to Buffalo, I'll give you a tour. Maybe we'll work something out. We have lots of buildings there too, obviously. The house on the left, the gray house, that's my story. Now, the house on the right, the teal one, that's fine. We renovated that, no big problems. Found great pocket doors. We found beautiful ceilings that were underneath the drop ceilings. Great project. Every day was like an adventure. Every day in that teal house on the right, every day was exciting. But the house on the left, I had to bring a demolition contractor into the house. And I said to him, do I have to demolish this house? And he said to me, absolutely not. I was like, okay, because I'm a preservationist and people will think I'm crazy if I start demolishing things. So we didn't, but it took a lot of hard work. And so this house, single family, 3 bedrooms, no historic character left in it except the staircase. Staircase was cool, save the staircase. How do I even start this? The whole house was falling down 6 inches. Let's start there. So the foundation decided to crumble for about 25 years. And the whole house was falling down 6 inches. All the back specifically, because all the top plates, everything was rotted. There were 2 holes in the roof, one on each side, conveniently. So now I had water damage everywhere. The siding was terrible. The windows were non-existent at the time. You can see sort of they're all beat up. And believe it or not, someone actually was living in this property when we bought it. Like that. They were squatting in it. So, funny story, so when you buy houses at auction, they don't come with keys. They come with, what I call a key, which is either your drill, because you undo all the wood, or you get a crowbar and you make the best of it. This property had one open window. I'm kind of digressing, but this is important. I got all my guy friends around me. And I'm like, we're going to go in the building. All right, guys, you're going to help me do this? So my husband, Jason, goes in the window onto what is the refrigerator in the kitchen. There's a door to the right, so we're all ready. He's going to let us in. He's going to open the door, and we're going to get in the property. Because we owned it, by the way, but this is what you have to deal with when you buy it at the auction. Jason gets in on the refrigerator. He sees open mail. Now, we thought it was vacant, okay? He goes to unlock the handle, and it locks. It's a double lock, and he couldn't get out. He couldn't get in. We couldn't get in. He was on the other side. I'm on one side, looking at him through the window, scared that he's going to get killed by whoever's in the house right there, okay? That's the city auction property. He runs to the front door, opens it up, runs out. No one was in the house. But it was really scary. It really was really frightening for a moment. I thought I was going to lose him. I was like, great, he's not even my husband yet. This was 2 years ago. Long story short, we renovated it. We believed that we could do it, and we did. And now, if someone tells me, personally, oh, you can't save that building. It's got a crumbling foundation. I look at them. I'm like, we can do this. I know. I've got the guy. We're going to save this. We're going to save this building, and the foundation will be A-okay. So that's sort of my story with the building. We actually haven't finished renovating it yet. The TV show kind of came in and put everything on hold. So this is going to be renovated this year. So I apologize. It's been like a 2-year process. But to my defense, I was filming a TV show last year. So that took months and months of my time. Which, by the way, y'all have to check out. American Rehab Buffalo. It's going to be really fun. 6 episodes, 1 historic house, vacant for 20 years, all about preservation. It's fabulous. All right. So that brings me to BYP initiatives. So, as I said, beer. BYP, this is the Preservation 2.0. This is the new wave. What do? Everybody drinks beer. It's not just young people. Our bars close at 4 a.m. We are a beer drinking city. We have silos, grain elevators, that are wrapped in a Labatt 6-pack that look like 100-foot 6-pack of beer. I'm not kidding. Buffalo's beer drinking town. But what we do when we drink beer is we throw fundraisers, we throw events, we throw community meetings, we have flyers, and whatever we're working on, when we drink beer with people, they know what's going on. So we do happy hours. During our happy hours, we do things like this. You can sort of read, it says, not another winner. We find buildings on the demolition list. Again, we're focused on the neighborhoods. We're focused on the dollar houses. We're focused on building our communities and our neighborhoods because that's what matters. And so we educate people about whatever house is being demolished or about to be demolished. The building I showed in the Hamlin Park district, we decided to talk to the owner and we cleaned it up for him. He thought we were crazy. I said, no, we'll pay for everything. We'll pay for the paint. We'll pay for the trash bags. We'll pay for whatever it's going to take. I'll bring the coffee. No beer in the morning. We don't do it on Saturday mornings, no beer. But we do coffee, and we get the community together, and we paint, and we clean up, we weed whack, whatever it takes for these vacant buildings to become fresh and ready for redevelopment. And by the way, we do that on our own dime with no insurance. Don't ask. People always think I'm crazy. We go into buildings. You'll see more pictures. We do this. Yeah! This is on the east side of Buffalo where it was crumbling, where I'm talking about the east side, how, and by the way, the east side is coming back. It's slowly but surely, it will be there. The west side of Buffalo is where I focus, but the east side is it's almost there. It's going to come. This historic theater on the east side. Owner was way in over his head. They said they were going to replace the roof. I don't see it. They still haven't replaced the roof, and this is almost 2 years old, this photo. So what we did is we contacted the owner, and we cleaned it out for him. There's 8 feet of water in the basement. We hired a contractor for $80, pumped that water out. In the middle of the winter, by the way, when it was 14 degrees out, there's 30 people, 30 kids, in this building, sweeping, cleaning, boarding up the building, boarding up the windows so the snow wasn't coming in anymore. Whatever we could do within our power, we do it. And that's sort of that wave of preservation. It's the we like to do shit. Sorry. You know, I don't want to swear too much, but we are a generation of community-minded people, and we want to make our mark. And it's preservation is the way to do it, in my opinion. It's amazing. So that theater, unbelievable. And it's hopefully going to be restored. No guarantees, but it's doing okay right now. We also clean out people's houses when they buy vacant buildings and they're covered and they're filled with trash. So we do that stuff. And we also do big campaigns. So how many people, I did this in my speech, or my presentation earlier, how many people have windshield wipers on their car? Everybody. Well, it was invented in Buffalo by the Trico Building, Trico Windshield Wiper Factory. John O'Shea from Buffalo, they still have the biggest foundation in the city today. Like, they're the people with millions and millions of dollars that support preservation initiatives. They want to demolish his factory building. 600,000 square feet. It's on the National Register. Daylight factory, which is perfect for conversion into almost anything, in the best location of the city, right next to our medical campus, right next to historic Allentown, all of these great places. The owner wants to demolish. So we can't have that. I mean, the windshield wiper is pretty important. It's on the National Register, yada, yada, yada. We got to make this happen. So BYP decides that first of all, we talked to all the previous preservationists that have done this a million times. But we took it up to another notch. We took it up to what I think is the Preservation 2.0, the crazy, intense, tactical urbanism, crazy things that we do to save buildings and not get arrested for it, surprisingly. So we did a huge campaign, SaveTrico.com. We did stickers. We did local landmarking. We did petitioning. Those are all the basics. We did heart bombs. We, in the middle of the night, decided to take buckets of chalk I should back up. The owner is the city, and their offices are literally in the Trico Building, sort of, right next door. So it's very appropriate that they're next door in a reused part of the building, but want to tear down the rest of the building. Does that make sense? So in the middle of the night, we decided to get a big bunch of chalk, and we wrote "Save Trico" in the biggest font you could imagine on the street, so that when they woke up in the morning and they went to their offices, they were like, damn, God, there's kids. They won't leave us alone. The owner of the building said, I can't even go to a soccer game with my kids without hearing about this stupid Trico building. And you know what? 2 years later, I got a bunch of gray hairs, tried to locally landmark the building, petition the neighborhoods. We did all these crazy aggressive things like the heart bombing and a variety of things. Sticker campaign, which, by the way, I didn't put one sticker up, for the record. But there were a lot of stickers all around the city. People were pissed at that. Excuse my language. They were really angry. Building is being saved. So, $42 million restoration was just announced. They're dealing with some National Park Service discussions about the historic preservation tax credits. But we now will have a 600,000 square foot daylight factory building that will be an extended stay hotel, apartments, and maybe even a grocer and even some parking. But I don't care. It's still standing. So that's my success story for the day. Thank you. Windshield wipers. Thank you. And I also didn't say, but one of our big slogans, so this is where the windshield wiper was invented, the big slogan was, don't let it get wiped away. And people were like, that is so clever. I'm like, yes. And my ending slide has everything to do with Trico, but I don't want to give it away to the end because it's extremely important. So BYP also does, so the next wave of preservation is really kind of the fun stuff. I think it's just the fun stuff. We do preservation speed dating, which we did last night, which was totally different than what we do in Buffalo, but we do it with style, we do it with design, we do it with fun, we do it with vigor, and we do it on the cheap. And I think everybody in preservation knows, nobody has any money to do all the things that they should do, but we do it even cheaper than anybody's done it before. So I want to talk about, how much time do I have? Okay, we're good. Want to talk about heart bombs? All right, so a couple years ago, 4 years ago, I said we should put, bless you, so we should put hearts on our buildings. And people laughed at me. Now I should say, this was right after we put a giant bow on a building that was ready for demolition around the holidays. We put a huge bow. We wrapped a whole building in a giant bow, and it was epic. So I said, well, why don't we do hearts for Valentine's Day? Well, that turned into a giant, fun thing of, awesomeness, let's say. So we did heart bombs. We took a couple of significant buildings, and we put construction paper hearts on them. And they get people talking about them. And then people really they're like, these buildings are so great. Why are they up for demolition? I don't know, you tell me. Why don't you ask the political officials? Why don't you ask the city building inspectors? Why are they up for demolition? That's what those hearts do. It gets the conversation going. Houses like this. How charming is this? I mean, it's a perfect starter house. It's the house for the family it's a reasonable renovation. Churches, buildings, Trico, we've heart bombed them all. So then heart bomb starts to pass around, it starts to spread. And a couple years ago, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, who I follow on Instagram, I've never met, but the gentleman loved the heart bomb idea and he started heart bomb things. Wheeling, West Virginia decides to get all their young preservationists together and they heart bomb. And I'm telling you, I said, where's Wheeling, West Virginia? It's a cool town. I'm going there in 2 weeks. I'm going to meet them all for the first time. I'm so excited. They do an All You Need Is Love campaign based on heart bomb. And they're all young kids. The National Trust picked up heart bombs. They wanted to do, now some people don't want to call it heart bomb, by the way. They want to call it lovescaping or All You Need Is Love. Heart bomb is a graffiti term. It's not supposed to be any type of negative term. It's just an art form, just so you know. So I Love Texas Courthouses campaign. The Twin Cities, Will O'Keefe is in the room here. This is my favorite. Don't go breaking my parts, right? Like the song? Don't go break. Yeah, this is probably my favorite heart bomb I've ever seen. Indy, heart bombs. Omaha, heart bombs. Yahoo! And it was awesome. I love seeing all the photos. I love seeing on Instagram, social media. You guys did an amazing job. And you did it very cool, very DIY. Go up, get it. Some people are a little safer with the heart bombs. Some people, we go up and we take big staplers and we go, and then we run away, And then we have a meeting about it later and a community engagement meeting to tell people what we did. So that brings me to, I'm not like a super expert, but what is the future of preservation? This picture I took at my birthday party, which conveniently the area code of Buffalo is 716 and my birthday is 716. So appropriate, it's unbelievable. And that's the Buffalo flag with the thunderbolts, which is by far the best thing in the whole wide world. I carry it around with me to bars and wave it, and people get really excited. I'm like, go Buffalo. So, what is the future? The future for me, and I'd say the younger preservation movement as a whole, is our commitment to neighborhoods. We could care, I'm going to say this and it's going to offend people. We care less if you put a vinyl window in. We care more that the building is still standing. And trust me, I don't like vinyl. But if that vinyl window is what it's got to take to keep that intact neighborhood and to keep our neighborhood strong and to be more efficient, more whatever it's got to take, we want to see that happen. We want to see our neighborhoods thrive. Omaha is a city of neighborhoods. Buffalo is a city of neighborhoods. And that's what we want to do. The big buildings are important, but we want to do what it takes. Just do what it takes to keep those buildings standing, because our cities are still at that low point where they were forgotten about for so long that we want to see these come back. Wacky adaptive reuse projects is the future of preservation, in my opinion. The saucer here in Omaha is the coolest. I know. I couldn't believe I said, take me to the saucer. Cindy, take me to the saucer. And when I was doing my research about Omaha, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a bike shop? How appropriate. And how cool. And furthermore, I have to talk about this because it was me. the picture of me walking down the aisle, surrounded by grain elevators at my wedding, talking about wacky adaptive reuse projects, that is pretty cool. And that is what millennials like to do. That's what millennials like. We want to get married and surrounded by grain elevators and have food trucks at our wedding. Cool. Awesome. We break all those norms. We're the defiant generation. And I'll tell you what, it was the most beautiful wedding. And there were people, I don't mean to talk about it, but the backdrop was all grain elevators right along the Buffalo River. Behind me were grain elevators. When I was walking across the aisle, I had to walk across railroad tracks because the marine legs on the grain elevators were there at one time. So I'm like, in my high heels, oops, watch out, don't trip, you know. And but we had a blast. And so for me, the future of preservation really means that our sacred spaces, our churches are going to have to be adaptively reused in ways that maybe don't agree with the National Park Service. Sorry. Because we have to chop them up to keep them standing. Because we have to turn our grain elevators in Buffalo into an art party once a year, and then do poetry readings every month, and do these wacky kind of crazy things in order to keep the attention on them, to keep them alive. You have to turn a flying saucer into a bike museum, or bike shop. That's amazing. I think we have to blend sustainability, and you guys probably know this, but we got to figure out how to blend sustainability and preservation together. Preservation Green Lab is a great organization, and they're really kind of putting all those pieces together. But when somebody tells me I can't have solar panels on my 1860s cottage that I'm renovating right now, that I bought for $1, by the way, I'm like, no, I'm putting solar panels. This house is going to be off the grid. I'm going to think about the future, and I'm going to remember the past. I'm going to blend the two of them together. And maybe I have to put high efficiency or spray foam insulation and in some parts and leave the brick in others, but I'm going to do what it takes to keep that building standing. And you know what? Solar panels are sexy anyway. Come on now. No, maybe not on a slate roof. That would drive me crazy personally, but they're very cool. And something people don't talk about in preservation, which is silly, is we need to figure out how to support our old urbanism, which is now called new urbanism. So there are people here that were at the Congress for New Urbanism conference, which the national conference was in Buffalo last year. That, like new urbanism, is so important because it basically says, hey, your city's now legal again. Everything you know, all of your dense housing and your mixed-use buildings, all of that stuff that we know and love is now legal again. Because previously, the zoning of our cities made all of that illegal. So if you go to Buffalo today, it is illegal to build that Buffalo double. It's illegal. Cannot be built. However, cities like Buffalo, including Buffalo, are embracing new urbanism, embracing our old urbanism. And they are putting together form-based zoning codes that allow, they're called form-based zoning codes, but they're putting together zoning codes that actually support what our cities were at one time. Hello, we're going back to the old. Organic farming was just normal farming at one time, right? So we're going back to the good old urbanism, the walkable, dense communities, the neighborhoods that matter, the trolley lines, the transit-oriented development. By the way, we just coined a really cool term in Buffalo. Y'all will appreciate this. Beer-oriented development. You know what that is? Breweries that open that kickstart development all over the place. Brewery opens in the middle of nowhere, everybody wants to live there. Everyone wants to, then our gallery pops up. Beer-oriented development. Just like transit-oriented development. People want to live near the transit lines. I want to live next to a brewery. We also need to focus, I'm doing good. We also need to focus on political support. So there's no question, if you do research about me, I am planning to run for office in the near future. And I want to do it with vigor and with a completely different perspective, which is, well, if I can get a moratorium on demolitions for like 1 year, hello, the city of Buffalo would be awesome. We could reevaluate all of our historic districts and all of our historic structures and actually make preservation make sense and save more buildings. So political changes, the Buffalo Green Code, which is that switch as we switch our zoning practices to what's called the Buffalo Green Code, or other cities are doing it too, Miami and Denver, to new urbanism, those policy changes matter. The local landmarking in Omaha doesn't have any teeth, from my understanding. That's what I was told. Neither does it in Buffalo, doesn't either. Why is that? Why is that? Hey, it's a local landmark, but yeah, you can demolish it? Not acceptable. So it's creating good policy changes, and I think as preservationists, we need to do more. I say this all the time. We need to do more to get in front and be at the table and help run for office, become the mayor, and make those changes yourself. All right, so, and then community, I know, right? I'm too rosy. Like, I know there's a lot of problems in that. Whatever, it's fine. I've cut this attitude through a lot of preservation battles, so it hasn't done me wrong. Also, community engagement. Now, this sounds really silly, but I think that the preservation movement, the preservationists as a whole right now are doing a really good job at engaging the community better. When I started preservation probably about 8 years ago, it was very inclusive. And you couldn't get in, you couldn't talk to anybody. You know, they didn't have happy hours. They were all sitting at home working on their registered local landmarking nominations. And there was never that conversation. And that's actually why we started BYP, because BYP was supposed to be friends first, preservation second. What are we working on? Very together. We've never actually had an argument. I only had to kick one person out because he was crazy in 4 years. That's not that bad. And we keep growing, which is cool too. And so community engagement, doing these fun things like heart bombs, tactical urbanism. You know, how do we make our neighborhoods better? Gardening. I talked to Cynthia today. She, was gardening in Omaha. How do we make our communities more unique? Well, close down the street and do yoga for a day. No, that doesn't sound like preservation, but it is preservation because it's, oh, hey, the neighborhood matters. They're doing yoga. Cool. Maybe I want to buy a house here. Preservation. Kind of in a weird nutshell, but it's true. And so I wanted to end with this because let me tell you about preservation and young people. Love is all you need to save buildings, and I think we all know this because the love, it's where you invest your love, you invest your life. So that's one of my favorite quotes. When you invest your love, you better save that building, right? Well, I'll tell you what else works. When you get a tattoo on your shoulder, what the Trico Building, which my friend Melanie did, she's on the lower right, that says, the political view, they're like, whoa, these people are crazy, we have to save this building. Sometimes love is all you need, and then you love it so much, you get a tattoo. Thank you.